KTSA News Time is 10:09. Good morning, Jack Riccardi on News Talk 550 KTSA with our gang of four in studio. But first, a developing story this morning. In just the last few minutes, we are getting word that Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak is now apparently ready to resign completely from office. Let's listen into the latest reports from ABC News.
There was deep dissatisfaction, there was anger, there was bitterness after last night's developments. They took to the streets in huge numbers today. President Mubarak said he would not bow to international pressure during his speech, but most of the pressure came from within, and he has succumbed to it today.
All right, so what we had understood earlier today was that Hosni Mubarak was handing over powers to his vice president, who he hand-selected in the early days of this crisis, and was going to remain in the country and remain a figurehead and not leave office or give up the title of president until later this year when there are elections. Now, what we're hearing is that he is resigning from the presidency effective immediately. We expect something from Egyptian state television. We'll listen in for that. It's 10:15 now on News Talk 550 KTSA on our gang of four today as they are waiting to take on this and many other stories. We have the First Lady at the left. Lisa Hunt is here, and she's wearing some sort of dead animal on her head.
It's not quite a dead animal. It's a koala bear.
But it's a recreation of a
It's
koala
a recreation
bear, right?
of a koala bear.
No actual koala bears were harmed.
I knew that I was going to be filmed
Zero
today.
in on that hat.
I just
with your
figured
camera,
that
Taylor.
he would want to have some creativity in this crowd today.
All right.
And
It's very
not that everybody else isn't creative.
It's very no, it's great. It's not the first time we've had roadkill on our show, but that's
Really?
all right. So welcome back. It's good to see you.
Thank
I know
you.
you're feeling better. You've
I am
had some health
feeling
problems.
much better.
We're glad to hear you're back and you're with us today, and I know we'll hear a lot from you. Also with us today, last year he was a almost successful candidate for state representative in his very first ever political run for office. Dr. Masarrat Ali, local businessman. Dr. Ali, welcome back to Gang of Four.
Well, thank you, Jake.
And also, Michael Shakleford, speaking of politics, he's just a connected, wired-in guy. Somebody told me, Michael, that you are training to box. Is this true?
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
I actually wanted to fight Pacquiao. I would love to do that.
You want to fight Manny Pacquiao?
Island Boy versus City Boy.
Yeah. And when will that be? I want to be there for that.
I don't know.
Me too.
I don't want to be late for that fight because I think it might be over very quickly.
I
I
don't
want to
know.
make sure I get a good seat. So that's not true? You're not in training? It said on your Facebook page you were trying to gain weight.
I'm trying to gain weight. I keep
Man,
losing.
let's you and I talk after the show.
All right.
If you want to gain weight,
No. Let's
there's
you
no
and
one.
I talk.
There's no one who can help you more than me, Michael. All right, you're in the right place. So that's our gang of four today. You can jump in at 599-5555. All right, gang. What do we think about Egypt? What's your first reaction? Because this development, Mubarak's actual resignation, as opposed to his "I'm just stepping aside," this just happened while you were all in the room here. What do you think?
I think it's fantastic.
Could you elaborate?
Could I elaborate? Well, you always have this elation feeling, and then on the other hand, you're wondering what's going to happen next. If there's nobody there to be in charge, who's in charge? How are they going to go through this process? Because it is a process. And you can't become a free society overnight, as we
It's been
well
a
know.
crazy story, Dr. Ali. It's so many twists and turns, and it's only been a couple of weeks, but it feels like it's been going on for
Well, I guess this was brewing for a while, and I put a note on my Facebook that Egypt became free on January 25. And in my opinion, the freedom or slavery is more or less is a state of mind. And if Egypt became free when the Egyptian realized that they learned to stood up against the Mubarak regime. Mm-hmm. And if I can draw some parallel to the same story what happened in India some 60 years ago when Indians got the freedom from the British. The Indians became free the moment that they learned that they can rise up against the British. I think that is the most important stage for any kind of freedom struggle. So I think it was about to happen, and I don't think that we have to be concerned that Egypt is not ready or the Egyptians people don't know how to handle the freedom. They will learn. They will learn very soon. And they are very smart, very educated people, and I think in the long run we are going to be fine.
Michael Shakleford, it's fascinating to see the way this has been driven by new technology, the internet, Facebook, Twitter, young people in a country with no tradition of democratic participation. They have no tradition, no history of this at all.
Yeah, it is interesting. But you know, I was talking to a personal friend of mine who is in Egypt, and she had told me that when the government shut down Facebook and Twitter, they were still able to gather people through tweeting, through text messaging, and because they weren't able to shut down the cell phones that were online, which is very interesting. And I don't think you need to have a long history of democracy to gather people up in protest. You just have to be able to wrangle up a group. But I think what the real challenge is to write up a constitution that will be acceptable to the people and to the government at the same time. I think that's going to be the real challenge, you know. And I'm really surprised that it didn't last a lot longer. I just think that Mubarak is really stubborn. He's been in office for over 30 years, and I'm just really surprised it didn't last until late.
He said he has $70 billion. Did you hear this?
Yes, something.
$70 billion. So I mean, maybe he just makes the calculation that at some point, if I don't leave under my own power, I might be leaving in a way I don't want to.
Yeah, that's
because we've seen that happen many times before. But I think you make a good point. There are very difficult days ahead for the governance of Egypt. The people of Egypt may be very relieved, but somebody will have to be in charge, and somebody will have to figure out a way to govern that, as you say, takes into account the military, which now is essentially the power. That takes into account the fact that there are many different parties and factions. Probably not as bad as Iraq, probably not as ungovernable as Iraq has proven to be at this point, but still very difficult. And you have to factor in, I think, that this is a country where there's almost no one alive who remembers any other time, any other way than having a strongman dictator who runs the whole thing. We're going to talk more about Egypt and many other things that are making news this morning and this week with our Gang of Four. You can jump in, you can hang with the gang by making the call to 599-5555. We'll also let you vote in today's JR poll. It's 1021 on KTSA.
Well, he has. On one.
Sounds like Oprah.
Yeah, one radio they were talking, TV show that they were talking about that he probably have close to $70 million of wealth that he has accumulated so far.
But you know, that's not, $70 billion is not what it used to be. I mean, you got to, with inflation.
Yeah, but it's still, this is what we know.
Just kidding, yes.
The issue is this, that he steps down is not good enough. He must be answerable to the Egyptian people.
Right.
He must, all of his wealth, his family wealth must be accounted for. He cannot just leave the country.
When you say accounted for, what do they do? Do they disseminate that money out to the people? I mean, what do you mean by accounted for?
It belongs to the state of Egypt. They have to take it back in whatever the shape and form that it is. Mostly it is in gold or in real estate, and they have to account for it.
So, during the 2008 presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton ran a famous ad with a telephone ringing in the dark. It was the 2 a.m. phone call. She was trying to say, my opponent is untested, inexperienced. He's not going to be ready for the 2 a.m. phone call. Well, this is the proverbial 2 a.m. phone call. This crisis, definitely yesterday, this White House looked very confused, very off its game. The CIA director was saying he knew things because he'd seen them on television. The director of national intelligence is starting to come across as a very confused man. I don't know what's going on with him. Are they answering the call? Is the Obama administration on top of this, or is this on top of them?
I was wondering when you were going to bring this up. I mean, because everybody was confused yesterday. I think everybody was confused yesterday. I don't think.
Yeah, but Lisa, it's one thing if you're confused or I'm confused.
I understand that it was confusing.
Or
it's because things changed that quickly.
So
I think they will get on top of it.
It's understandable that they would not have good information.
We went to Iraq with great information, didn't we?
Well, it didn't take you long.
No, it didn't take me long. But it's at least we didn't have to go over there and invade a country with the wrong information.
So this has been a great response because we.
Well, I don't know yet. I don't think we know yet. I think it's still developing.
Okay.
I mean, it's just it's just frothing at the mouth, just like when I was reading on your little question this morning. You know, everybody was like doom and gloom.
Actually, I've only had one person vote on the question. So I don't know what
No,
you're
it wasn't the
talking
question this morning. It was on the question about. I don't remember.
about.
It was.
Okay. So let's open this up to everybody else, and you take a bite of that cinnamon roll. Is the Obama administration, to the extent that could be reasonably expected, because again, it's not like there's a script to follow here. But do they seem more confused? Does the world's last remaining superpower seem more confused or flummoxed than it should be by what's going on here?
I think they are confused for one reason, because number one is that they didn't know, in fact, nobody knew in the whole world that this is going to happen. And for America, this is particularly a very sensitive issue because they're trying to walk a very fine line, not to go openly against Mubarak, so as not to infuriate our own other dictators that we are supporting. And as to how they would react, now are we going to be treated the same as America has treated Mubarak? So that issue is there.
Right.
The second issue is that we also don't want to be on the wrong side.
Yeah, I think that was a big consideration.
Wrong side of
Yeah.
the equation.
Hold on just a minute, Dr. Ali. We'll come back to that and talk more about it. But first, an update from ABC News. It's 10:30. Blinded of many administrations, including the current one. I have to say, though, and Lisa, you're not going to like it,
I never liked
but
it.
it's amateur hour. It's Leon Panetta, the director of the CIA, who should know that everything he says implies intelligence, not I saw it on MSNBC. It's Clapper, the DNI, making a remark about the Muslim Brotherhood that literally caused people's heads to snap. And it's the president being very mushy about what we want and not being able to articulate what it is we wanted to see happen or what our values are in this situation. I mean, is it really that hard for an American president, they've done it before, to come down on the side of people and their aspirations and freedom? Is it really that difficult for him to do that?
I don't think it's difficult for him to do that.
Well, he
at
hasn't
all.
done it.
Well, maybe he
It's
will at 12:30 today.
Well, not now.
Yeah.
The people have done it already now. But how different might this have been? And what a different message might this have broadcast to the world if America looked like it could make up its mind between a dictator and people who are spontaneously coming together for freedom?
I don't think that. I don't really think that it's that they couldn't do it. I think that there was a period of time in the past 24 hours when the volatility of this situation wasn't.
Let me ask you this: has there been a single soundbite, a single moment of clarity, a single moment that hasn't been just blah 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 since this started from the United States?
I don't think we knew what was going to happen. Things have changed.
Hey, we didn't know what was going to happen
Things
in
have
Eastern
changed
Europe. We didn't know what was going to happen in Tiananmen Square. That doesn't mean you can't come out, at least say, these are our values, this is what we want to see, these are the people we will support.
Well, I think, Jack, you have to be in the shoes of the American president and what his message means. As I said earlier, that there are issues pertaining to the other dictators that we are supporting, and those dictators controlling, half of the world's oil. What would happen to the oil market? What will happen to the stock market? What it means to send the wrong message, and how the message is more or less taken by the Israelis, how the message is taken for the, from the rest of the world. So if you see the message that was that. The Obama said that Mubarak must step down in an orderly fashion. This is as strong a statement as they could possibly give. If you see what happened in Tiananmen Square or what happened when Russians took over more or less Afghanistan, we did not even hear such a strong statement. So when you hear the statements coming out from the White House, it is a little more difficult than it is for you and I to say, okay, well, he must step down now and we just go and get rid of him. They simply cannot use that language.